We've established the fact that one of the Gitmo six Uruguayan six, has disappeared. We've also established the fact, I think, that there are certain requirements and parameters that must be met before detainees are transferred to a third country. Uruguay told us, well, first off, Uruguayan law prevented intelligence monitoring and mitigation, and former President Mujica said publicly that his government would place no restrictions on the movements of the 6 detainees that were released to Uruguay. Later, we had their chief intelligence officer privately informed the U.S. Embassy that these Uruguayan 6, the Gitmo 6, would not be restricted in any way, and that he was not authorized to conduct monitoring or surveillance. But if we go back to the requirements that have been talked about numerous times here this morning, surveillance and monitoring and some assurances were part of the deal. So America needs to understand that one of the 6 detainees captured on the battlefield, Al-Qaeda operatives, captured either in Tora Bora, Afghanistan, has disappeared. Uruguay, Brazil, United States, at this point have no idea where this individual is. Now, this individual that we're talking about, Jihad Diab, is a forger. He was responsible for forging documents, passports, and travel documents for Al-Qaeda terrorists. He's now disappeared into Brazil. So let's take it to the 30,000-foot level and think about Brazil in general. We've got an area in Brazil and Paraguay known as the tri-border region. A lot of folks are transiting through Latin America through an area known as the tri-border region. They're coming to South America, to that area, oftentimes on fake passports, not necessarily forged passports. They're just passports that don't belong to them. And they're exchanging those documents in that region for other false documents and trying to transit through Latin America to get to America, to get to the United States. Case in point, 5 Syrians traveled to the tri-border region in Brazil on fake Israeli passports. The hypocrisy of that, I think, is alarming, that Syrians traveled to the tri-border region on fake Israeli passports, exchanged those documents for somewhere around $25,000 for fake Greek passports that they used to travel to Honduras, apprehended at an airport in Honduras, trying to come to the United States on fake Greek passports. So now we have a Gitmo detainee, forger for Al-Qaeda, has escaped, disappeared, whatever you want to call it, into Brazil, possibly to the tri-border region to assist others from the battlefield, ISIS operatives possibly, coming to that area, exchanging documents, getting new forged documents or fake documents to possibly travel to the United States of America. But let's take it another step. There's a huge event getting ready to happen in Brazil, known as the Olympics. That's a heck of a terrorist target, folks. So we've got an Al-Qaeda operative who is a forger, who has escaped in Brazil or disappeared in Brazil, who has the ability to forge documents, and he's in a country that's getting ready to host the Olympics. I hope our counterterrorism efforts in Brazil, working with our allies there, are full bore. So I want to ask, now that this gentleman has escaped, he's gone missing rather, is the Obama administration concerned about that?
Sir, as I indicated previously, it would have been our preference that all 6 of the detainees transferred to Uruguay stayed in Uruguay.
You've stated that. I ask you a question. Is the Obama administration concerned over Jihad Diab's disappearance? Yes or no?
As I said, I would have preferred that he stayed in Uruguay with the 5 other detainees through the end of the program, which was for another few months until December 2014. If you're asking me what concerns me, frankly, it is the 532 who were transferred during the previous administration without the security.
We have established the fact that we all wished he would have stayed in Uruguay and would be right there with the other 5. What I'm asking you, is the Obama administration concerned that he has disappeared?
I believe I've answered your question.
Mr. Lewis?
Sir, we're closely.
Okay.
Sir,
Knowing what you know now, will you publicly repudiate the Sloan letter about the Uruguayan concerns, so the Uruguayan government, who this administration tricked, I think, about these people, can finally begin monitoring and controlling the remaining 5 detainees? Will you repudiate the Sloan letter?
We stand by the Sloan letter, and we stand by the representations that we made to the government of Uruguay at the time of the transfer. In fact, I believe that the Uruguayans told you, Congressman, when you visited, that they believed the United States had provided accurate information about each of the detainees transferred to their custody.
They did, and that contradicted some previous statements they had made publicly. So,
And why do you think that is?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think that is?
Well, we can go back through all of this.
Why would they say one thing to you and another thing privately?
Mr. Duncan, could you yield for a minute?
I can.
I did want to put something in perspective for our witnesses here, and it has to do with why the chairman of the Western Subcommittee would be upset here. And the fact is that the chief of intelligence in Uruguay explained to our committee, gave us the information that they were not allowed to monitor or surveil these 6 terrorists. And the decision you made was to transfer them anyway. He made that observation to this committee prior to the transfer. You made the decision to transfer these 6, despite our warnings. The second point that is upsetting to him is that the intelligence chief was then dismissed from his position after warning us of that and subsequently warning us that they were casing or they were outside our embassy after their release, and again, that they were not allowed to monitor or surveil. Now we find ourselves in the situation, despite Jeff Duncan's admonitions and concerns, and despite what we brought up at the prior hearing, we find ourselves in the situation where one of these 6 indeed is, one of these 6 terrorists is indeed been able to walk out of Uruguay, and no one knows where he is, but we do know his attitude. And this is the reason for our concern. But I thank Mr. Duncan for his trips and his work on behalf of the committee.
I want to thank the chairman for helping clarify that. The pattern is clear. We've been asking about these Gitmo 6 and about the Uruguayans' ability to monitor them for a long time now. And we have raised concern about events such as what we've witnessed in the last 60 days, where one of the 6 has just disappeared, who was an al-Qaeda terrorist. There's no doubt about it. He was a forger. And we're supposed to tell these countries that these weren't terrorists, that they weren't engaged in attacking or hurting our allies or our United States military in any way. Very clear that he was. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
We go to Mr.